Hi, this is Zach Ball with Omnis Technologies, continuing our series on the CTERA units. Today we're going to be talking about the cloud backup portion of the CTERA itself. Now the first thing we want to look at, if you actually have the cloud available, you'll see the cloud backup storage here. If you're using a CTERA as a local only, this tab won't actually show up. To make sure that you're actually connected to the cloud services, you go to the cloud services status, and we can see that we're connected to the CTERA portal. This particular client has 350 gigs on their cloud backup. So let's dig right in. Under the cloud backup, we have several options here. Control panel. This is the basic view. I mean, it just says when the next backup is. One of the things to consider about the cloud backup is I always run the local backups first, like early in the evening, and then the next morning I generally run the cloud backup. So it picks up all of those latest backups and then ships them off site. So this particular client, the next backup's gonna run in 11 hours. And then from here, the only thing we really use in this portion is the event log. We can kind of dive in here and see how much data was actually backed up the night before. Now, the way that the cloud backup works, it only picks up what changes have occurred and then pushes it off site. So we have, different size backups here. We've got 167 meg, 107, 54, So then continuing on from there, under the cloud backup tab, this is probably one of the more important portions of this. You can pick and choose what you want to be backed up to the cloud. So if you have some photos that aren't necessarily important or some kind of files that aren't necessarily important, you can just leave those on the local storage only, not being backed up to the cloud. So then what you'll do from this view is you'll drill down to the backups and then the agents. And then here is the server with several workstations. I believe this particular client, we just have the server being backed up. The workstations aren't actually being backed up to the cloud. And then under here, you can actually pick what's under the public drive. I covered the public share in another video. That is what's created by default. And you can just use that for storing files if you want to use it as a file server, or you can actually send backups there. And you can actually pick them to be put off site. One thing to note with the CTERA is the CTERA assumes that you want to back up everything that it collects. So you're paying for that cloud storage, and you may not necessarily want to use it all. So you have to go in here and uncheck what you don't want to back up to the cloud. The other thing I don't recommend doing is backing up the Windows disk image. If you actually do a disk image on a server, let's say, CTERA recommends not backing up the image to the cloud. They don't have a problem with the files. File backups are fine. Don't send those disk images of a machine or a server to the cloud. So this is a very important menu item here, because you can drill down to the folder and actually uncheck specific folders. So desktop documents, I can uncheck which one I want to stay local or leave the one checked to go out back to the cloud. So backup sets. We generally don't do anything in here. We just kind of leave this alone because we want everything to be backed up. This is where you can get into specific document types, but we generally always want everything backed up. Exclude sets. By default, temporary files are not sent off. Schedule. So this is another one important. So this particular cloud backup is just set to do it every 24 hours. You can get very specific with this. So like I was saying previously, I generally have the local clients backing up in the early evening, and then in the early morning, the cloud backup will pick those new backups and then ship it off site. So you can get very specific here. You can do every day of the week, Monday through Sunday, at any time. Like I said, I usually probably would do it like 1 a.m. because most of the backups only take maybe an hour or two to do locally. But then when you get into pushing that much data off site, it can take several hours, possibly, depending upon what your internet speed is. Generally, in our area, we have good internet, so it's usually cable or fiber. So it usually completes before people come in the morning. And you can also put stop times on this. So let's say you do have a cloud backup that's running late, you can put in here when you actually want it to stop. If it does start getting into business hours and slowing down the internet, you can set that time. We usually just set it to when it's completed. I'm gonna make sure I put this back to periodically. And then our throughput. So this particular client, we do have the bandwidth throttled for the backup. We generally don't do that. This particular client has some other services running at night that we don't want to interfere with. So we limit this to 128 kilobytes per second, during those hours. If it in fact does run at that point, it'll be throttled to that much during these hours. But that's the basic overview of the cloud portion. And like I said, this tab will only show up if you actually subscribe to the cloud services. If you aren't connected to the portal, the only thing it's going to show is the local backup menu itself. But the most important thing to keep in mind is the CTERA assumes that you want to back up everything on the CTERA device. You have to go in and uncheck what you don't want to back up.